I'm going to tell you a little bit about our speakers today for the presentation of the Jewish Community Services of South Florida as an agency spotlight within the Pride of Caring, a series for LGBTQ plus caregivers. And we have our wonderful dear Lucy, we have Dr. Elliot Sklar, and we have Serena Thompson. I'm going to start with our dear Lucy. She received her master's degree in social work from McGill University and has dedicated her career to supporting caregivers. Lucy was the founder and long-term manager of the Caregiver Support Center and a respite program for family caregivers. In 2003 and 2012, she received the Queen's Jubilee Award presented by the Canadian Home Care Association for her dedication in developing a national coalition to support caregivers. She's been a key architect of screening and assessment tools for family caregivers, and has presented those to providers and professionals across North America. And on a personal note, Lucy was a caregiver herself, caring for her mother for about 10 years. Now, Dr. Elliot Montgomery Sklar is a public health professional with 2 decades of experience in supporting the health of the public through academic work, research, and service. He has led healthy aging programs for seniors and for caregivers in Canada, Florida, and virtually. Dr. Sklar is a professor of health science at Nova Southeastern University in Florida. He publishes and presents his work internationally, focused on the complexity of issues related to aging and caregiving, which you can find online if you look him up. And I did that. It's really a nice website. Serena Thompson is a case manager for Jewish Community Services of South Florida. She works with LGBTQ plus older adults, uses her skills to contribute to their growing needs. She graduated from Florida Atlantic University with a bachelor's degree in social work. Since 2007, she has served clients aged 13 to 96, living with chronic disease, cognitive delays, and mental illnesses. Similar to her passion of rehabbing orchids, sometimes only from a stem, she enjoys supporting others until they can support themselves. Beautiful. Thank you, folks, so much for being here. Really looking forward to this. Elliot, Lucy, you're the stars here. Take it away and start our discussion.
Thank you so much. And I really want to thank you, Serena, for joining us today. This is, I think we mentioned last week during our program, our 6th year of running our Pride of Caring series for LGBTQ plus caregivers. And over the course of those years, we've been joined by guests from Colorado, different community organizations that we've liked to spotlight. We've had someone from a program in Montreal, where Lucy's located. We've had individuals from across Texas, and we are gaining a lot of traction with individuals in South Florida, where WellMed also has a footprint. And so naturally, I wanted very much to spotlight an organization that is close to where I'm located in South Florida, but also because we learn so much from one another in different organizations and how we serve clients and communities. And so I was delighted when Serena accepted our invitation. And I wanted to share the flyer that you see here is one that Serena shared with me, and I'll let you speak to it briefly. Our program will be a little different today because I'm going to actually stop sharing our slides, and we're just going to engage in conversation because we have a lot to learn from Serena. And Serena, I wanted to just start off, since we have the flyer here, before I ask you to tell us all about everything that you do. Is there anything that you wanted to spotlight in the flyer that we will also be sending out to our registered participants today?
Sure. Thank you, Elliot. The biggest thing is just how to get in touch with us. Our access line is listed there, 305-576-6550. And more importantly, when you or your client or loved one calls in, make sure that they specify that they're requesting services from the LGBTQ case management. We also have case management for older adults. And these are just some of the things that we do. Each case and each person is different, so their plan and their care be tailored to their needs.
Excellent. I do have that number here on our resource slide as well, which we will be circulating. And I will share this again at the end of the hour, but I'm going to go ahead and pause sharing a slide so that we can really just talk. And Serena, I was hoping that you could tell us about the work that you and your organization do with the LGBTQ plus community.
Absolutely. For starters, JCS, or Jewish Community Services, offers a safe and supportive environment for the LGBTQ plus community. And this is where individuals can benefit from specialized programs that are non-judgmental and affirming. Specifically to case management, you need to be 55 years or older and identify as LGBTQ plus. And then we just come out, or myself would come out and meet with you one-on-one, get a brief assessment of what you are calling in for, and also apply my assessment to just see if there's any other services that we can put into place to give you a better quality of life, make your living environment more safe, or just connect you to other community services to help you and your loved one.
Oh, Lucy,
Oh,
you were on mute.
yeah, thank you for that, Serena. I think it's really exciting that you're joining us today, because I think it's quite a unique opportunity and a service that you provide for this particular community. But I was just wondering, what are some of the issues that you're seeing in your work with the older LGBTQ plus adults? Any difficulties that you want to kind of address today?
Sure. I mean, the need for LGBTQ plus senior programming is critical. Not only are they aging and they're dealing with the challenges that comes along with that, you know, covering that is also their years of enduring discrimination and lack of support. And that just makes seeking care more difficult for them. So I think it's just very vital that, we as community workers make them feel welcomed, not only in just advertising that we, provide LGBTQ services, but also, informing ourselves and being educated so that we know what their needs are and how to, morally support them.
So just to kind of a little bit emphasize more. So even though things have changed and there seems to be more openness to this community, living in Canada, it's different for us. And some of the political things that I hear in the United States that touches this community now. So do you see that affecting the clientele that you're seeing? Are they being fearful towards what's going on, or are they more reassured? Just in a general way.
Well, first, I would say overall, as a community, we have come a long way with being knowledgeable of this community and their needs, being welcoming and more inclusive. I would also say that we do have a long ways to go. To that point, in preparing for this discussion, I did speak with some of my LGBTQ plus caregivers, and got some of their feedback on what's, their personal experiences. And they said a lot of it is just, non-affirmative care once they get inside, whether it be a doctor office or a community agency. It's advertised, they are encouraged to come, but once they get there, it's the lack of. And because of that, they pull back or they stop treatment, or they're a little bit more apprehensive to start another treatment, such as me coming in. They shared, that they were apprehensive with Jewish community services really being open and informed on the LGBTQ plus community. So with that, if you do get a chance to work with this community, it's important, again, to be informed. Even if you don't know everything, be transparent with them, allow them to teach you what their needs are, how they want to be addressed. And the most important thing is just to be open and willing to know who they are and what they need.
Thank you.
Your response was so rich, and there's so many things that I want to tweeze and talk about. And you talked about affirming programming and services, and some of our listeners might not know what that is. And it's something that it's language that's used actually in your flyer, and something that resonates with me. Affirming programs and services. And what does that mean? It means programs that acknowledge a person's identity. For example, Lucy talked last week about intake forms, not having options for a different gender identity or a different type of relationship status than married or single, just as an example. So it's also counseling, it's programs that again, affirm who it is that you are in your identity. So for the LGBTQ community, that is that part of that identity. But historically, a lot of healthcare and community services have been provided through religious groups, through Jewish community services. I've mentioned before, my closest hospital where I'm located in Fort Lauderdale is called Holy Cross. There are Bibles open everywhere in doctors' practices. You definitely feel that there's a religious element when you're there to seek medical treatment. And I think for some members of our community, that can make people feel uncomfortable, which you touched upon. In fact, I'm not very familiar with many Jewish community services across the United States that have dedicated LGBTQ plus programming for seniors and caregivers. Is that something that you have found in your experience working with JCS or with other groups?
Say, being new to the Jewish community personally and professionally, I was surprised to hear that they had a program to support this community, not just what I do as case management, but as I mentioned, they've been doing this for over 30 years. We house the Lambda Living program, where they host community outreach support groups and different things outside of JCS. So I would say yes, I was really surprised to see a religious entity be so welcoming and inclusive and informed on this community. But it also gave me an honor and a privilege to be able to have their name behind me when supporting this group, so that we can start changing the stigma that not every religious organization is against them, or we can separate the two and just provide what it is that you're looking for and treat you as a person and not how you identify per se.
And I think another important point is that I would expect your services would be available to people no matter their religion or cultural background, correct?
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you brought that up. One thing that I've learned about the Jewish community is that they've always been inclusive to everyone, whether Jewish or not. And as an agency, I can say personally that they stand on those standards for sure. Like I mentioned earlier, we don't just have case management for LGBTQ plus, we also have case management for their counterparts. So they are very inclusive, regardless to religious, sex, race, and socio background for sure.
It's great to hear, and it should be that way in other places.
100%. I agree with that. So I hope people are listening, will listen to that. I'm going to this kind of popped into my head right now, the whole idea of intergenerational community getting together. Why am I bringing this up? My youngest daughter, who's in her early 30s, has friends who are in this community. When I have an opportunity to speak with them, they seem to not really have a good history behind what these elder people in this community went through. And when I sort of talk to them about it, it's like, really? About being, classified as having a mental disorder if you were gay at one point, not too long ago in history. And then the whole idea of being able to get married. And I was just wondering if that's something that you might, or should we be tackling that? Should we engage in that intergenerational way of supporting seniors. And God willing, these people will become elderly later on in life as well. So I was just wondering if there is such a program. Very interested in that.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. And this is an example of some of the things I encounter when I'm assessing clients is sometimes I don't know. And it doesn't mean that I ignore the need or just leave it on the table. A part of my job is to go and research other agencies or programs that do have the answer or have the support. But that is a very good point, Lucy, to just know that this has been something going on for years. And although we are starting to address it and see the stigma go down, the trauma is still there. And it is come up many of times with my clients, how they feel. Um, and that kind of leads into something else I was going to share later on, but I'll just dive into it now. The fact that, uh, a lot of them don't have children. Okay. So where are they going to turn when they need care? For those that do have children, their children may not, accept them, or they may not have that close bond as to they're going to take care of them. So it is very important to consider the history that is coming with these people when we're treating and serving them.
Yeah, that's a very
Absolutely.
important point. Yeah. I mean, we
And
talked about family of choice, right, Elliot?
yeah, absolutely.
Elliot's
Your
a little.
response that, we're making me think, and something that I brought up ahead of our hour today. I do work with LGBTQ community members, some of whom happen to be caregivers who are in their 60s or 70s, caring for older parents. And this week, on 3 separate occasions from 3 different people, I've heard, "I did not have children for a reason. I did not want to take this on." And here these people find themselves having to look after their parents and bear responsibility in a way that they never anticipated. But with that is a lot of anger. And what I think is important as we're talking about acknowledging the life experiences of elder community members, that anger comes through in different ways and gets misdirected at times. And I think because caregiving can be so innately frustrating, the experience when speaking further with these 3 individuals was that it was really more of a culmination of life course challenges and frustrations that were never really resolved. And here later in life, all of this sort of comes to a head when having to care for parents who may not have been very accepting or supportive, especially if someone came out a few decades ago when times were different. And so I think all the things that we've been talking about, the intergenerational aspect of it, the sensitivity to people's life course experience, so important. And also the Lambda Living program that you all operate links to the intergenerational, I think, because Lambda Living really is a program that is inclusive for many different groups of people. And I'm not sure if, Serena, you want to talk a little bit more about that too, so people know a little bit more about that program.
I know surface level. I'll be happy to link you to the program manager if that's appropriate, or even just calling into Access and mentioning Lambda Living, they can connect them with that. But from what I know on the surface is, again, they do a lot of outreach, a lot of support groups, and it incorporates not just the LGBTQ plus community, but also their family, their allies, and teaching them how they can be supportive to this group. But again, from what I know, they're on the surface, their mission is to just inform the community and support the community and trying to bring everybody more into unity.
Awesome. The other thing that I just quickly wanted to mention, I'm sorry, Lucy,
No.
because my brain is working.
Go for it.
The other thing was I appreciate, Serena, that you the resource. It's something that a lot of our guests in previous years have shared with us. I'm not sure if it was last year or 2 years ago, we had someone from the Cook County, Illinois AAA, and they were only one of 2 AAAs in the entire country to have a dedicated LGBTQ plus service person for caregivers, and for seniors in general. And one of the greatest challenges that they encountered was not having that resource network. That's why we love to do these community spotlights of agencies and people working within them, because I think a lot of our challenges are shared, and a lot of the things that we experience, I think, can help to inform others. I've said that sometimes we're creating a community through this program, and we've had really, for example, last week, one of our guests who had joined us as a Spotlight community agency a couple of years back joined us as a guest in our program last week and shared some new information with us. So it's just always nice to see those connections pollinating or blooming like an orchid, as you enjoy. And I just wanted to really make that point.
Awesome.
Well-
I mean, I agree. I don't know if I'm supposed to add to that or not.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes. Whatever you want, it's just free flow.
Sure, I agree. And as a case manager, that's what I do. I'm always trying to just link clients to other services or kind of bring in a collaborative team, because even if we're all facing the same dilemma, if we all have resources for this challenge, it's going to be a different perspective, a different style. And, as the old folks may say, it takes a village to raise a child, and same thing applies. It takes a village to help people. So yes.
I'm very interested as a case manager. What are the cases that come up or are assigned to you? Just what are the issues that are they different from any other issues that might come up with the aging process, or are they more distinct, more focused on the community? I'm very interested in that.
Sure. I would say that they're similar to a point. Again, they're aging, so they're needing some support in that journey of their life. Obviously, if they're reaching out to a social service agency, they need some type of help, whether it's monetary, counseling. But the main difference between my non-LGBT older adults and my LGBTQ older adults is a lot of the folks that came from the LGBT community, didn't work the typical way that their non-counterparts worked. A lot of them, unfortunately, were faced with discrimination in the workplace, which led them to getting involved into illegal activities. Some of them also came with immigration challenges. So both of those challenges, caused them to maybe do things that created a criminal background. Therefore, they were not able to work or work as much. And fast forward, it impacted their payment into Social Security. So some of them get the bare minimum, some of them don't qualify at all. So the biggest need I'm seeing is emergency financial assistance, legal resources, of course, mental health resources. But that's the biggest thing or difference is, them not having a good work history, if you will.
Thank you for that. It's very interesting because when Elliot and I do our series, what comes up from research is that mental health is a little bit more prevalent in this community. And we know the reasons why. I mean, so that whole issue. And the reason I brought it up is because I think it's so important for other organizations to look at what are the challenges that that this community faces, and what services should they be putting in place. So maybe you could just elaborate a little bit about that. Like if I was starting a new resource, what would you suggest would be the most important thing that I should be developing for this community?
Absolutely. I would say most importantly would be policy changes. I think that just for any challenge in life, starting from the top is what trickles down, the change that we really need. And then more on a one-on-one surface, having emergency financial reserves, because again, a lot of their needs is coming from needing housing, or if they already have a house, kind of maintaining it, utilities, maintenance, things of that nature. To kind of tie in caregiving and aging and all of that, I would say legal resources, emphasizing the importance to have a long-term care plan in place, both financially and in writing. A lot of times folks may have the money or they may know what type of care that they want, but if it's not in a legal document like a will or a power of attorney, it can't be executed. And then again, just for us as providers, or you as a new provider, if you were newly opening up something, just to be as culturally informed as possible, not only with LGBTQ concerns, but just also different cultural backgrounds, immigration, things of that nature.
Thank you so much. I think you kind of put it all in this wonderful package. And I hope that in the future, whoever watches this podcast, and many healthcare workers do, it'll be an inspiration. Thank you.
It's also nice to see that some of the themes that you're bringing up echo our program from last week, which for those of you listening to this, you can find on the YouTube channel link that we'll be providing at the end of our program. But I had mentioned that we had a guest who was one of our spotlight agencies in years past. And she had shared actually the same things, the need for legal documents in place, care planning. We talked about some of the issues related to finances and marriage and social security benefits and survivor pensions and things like this that really come up here, because for a lot of these older community members, marriage was never an option for them in their life course. So when it became an option later in life, many people felt like, what does it matter? Not thinking about FMLA, social security benefits, all the other things that come with. And I think that that is what we're seeing in some areas of our community, is that community members are financially constrained because they didn't think ahead and recognize the potential of marriage and how that could help to support them in their caregiving journey, but also after the caregiving journey ends. Serena, there was something that I wanted to ask you, because I am a teacher. In your training in social work, do you feel like you received the adequate training that you needed in this area to work with this community? Or do you feel like you've learned a lot of it on the job?
Well, to be transparent, I may be a bit biased, being that a very close friend of mine identifies as lesbian. So I have been an ally to her since high school. So I kind of sought and seeked opportunities during school to learn more about this community and how to help them and her. And also I was raised by my grandmother. So during electives, I chose aging classes and opportunities to learn more on how to support her. But to your point, I would say, yes, they did. Not specifically with the elderly population, but specifically with the LGBTQ community, and how this community is growing and is becoming more accepted, and we need to be ready for them to walk into our agencies and know how to address them, know how to be transparent if we don't know how to address them. But there was a lot of information in the curriculum to be ready for this population, be aware of our biases, and again, just know how to support this community.
That's great. I love hearing that. I think it's always something that, the area of caregiving as a whole is something we can do a better job at as educators, because usually within the health professions, the training is really client focused or patient centered. We don't often think of the caregiver as being a support for that patient or client. And nowadays, we know that caregivers, informal caregivers, unpaid caregivers are really the largest source of long-term care support. So that's why we're all here. If you had a dream wish list of things that you could have access to better support your community members, what would that be?
Money. But more specifically, I would say just programming that's not necessarily circled around politics or organization agendas. I mean, I know that we're in business, we have to have things in place to protect ourselves and get things done. But I've seen a lot, and not necessarily in my current position, but just over my years of working with different agencies, it seems like it was more number driven, more kind of like a checkbox type of ordeal. So I wish that care could be more centered on meeting the person where they are, having a little bit more flexibility that, hey, our program may not be tailored to this need, but let's figure out a way to still help them. And as you said, the purpose of this discussion is just to get more community people on the same page, letting us know where each other are, and just working together as a team.
Absolutely, and sharing those resources that are so important to everybody. And speaking of resources and things and meeting people where they are, I think that's, for me, been one of the greatest aspects of participating in the caregiver teleconnection, from the perspective that people can join virtually. They can watch recordings. We talked a little bit about mental health. Lucy and I recorded a program that is now on our Caregiver Teleconnection YouTube channel, specifically the mental health of LGBTQ plus caregivers in the community. And what we really wanted with this recorded program was to focus on those resources that we were talking about, and to have that as sort of as a recorded repository where people could go and access information if they needed it. So I'm hoping that people will tune in, look for that, and maybe share that with different agencies or organizations because of those resources that we were talking about. I was curious, Serena, if you identify a mental health issue with a case that you're working on, where do you typically refer people? Is it in-house? Are there hotlines that you like to refer people to until you can get something coordinated? What's your process?
We do have mental health resources in-house. We have a behavioral health department, which I'm actually under. So I start there because it's a little bit more easier to manage the case and collab. Sometimes we do have a wait list, or sometimes we don't accept their insurance. I then will refer them back to our access line, which is also the home of 211, as well as 988. So they have a plethora of resources that sometimes I can access a little quicker than having the individual call. If all else fails and we need to go outside, I don't have my resource bucket up today, but I do have a bucket of different hotlines that deal with the mental health issues or whatever specifically is their challenge. But I can link them to, sometimes actually go with them to, and be a support until they get settled there. But yes, just to note that Jewish Community Services also manages the 211 and 988 hotline, which are two good mental health resources.
Thank you.
So for those participating or listening in, 211 is an information hotline that you can call from any phone. It's one of the resources we always like to share to help get people connected in their communities. And of course, 988 is the mental health hotline that was launched last year that people can call in crisis to speak with someone, because often there are waiting times until you can get connected with a counselor or therapist. And we have found certainly those hotlines can be very helpful especially for members of our community who may not feel entirely trusting or comfortable engaging in a counseling relationship. So it can be a good entryway. And I'm sorry, Lucy, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's perfectly fine. That's what this is about. We're just talking, engaging. One of the things that I'm still very concerned about is educating healthcare workers, all interdisciplinary, doctors, nurses, social workers, OT, PTs, all. And why am I saying that? It's because I still feel there's a big job to be done. I've now engaged in developing services for a clinic that is primarily doctors who are looking at dementia issues. And one of the things we're talking about forms, right? So I had to develop a form, a referral form for the doctors to refer to counseling and other services. So when I was so conscious of that, making sure not to say Mr., Mrs., and all that, when I presented it, there was this, oh, really? What is this all about? I'm sorry to say. But once I explained it, there was such openness. There was really, oh, yes, that makes sense. We really need to do things like that. So I'm just wondering, I mean, this is what Elliot and I try to do in our sessions is the educational part about it. But for me, it's the healthcare workers as well that is so important because these are the people that the clients face on a daily basis. You know, you don't feel well, you go to your doctor, right? And Elliot and I talk about this a lot. Just because someone looks female, do we assume that they have a husband or a wife or whatever, and vice versa? So I'm just wondering, in your organization, I'm sure you have enough to do. Is part of that education also internal? Do you educate your healthcare workers? I would assume yes, but I'm just kind of wondering.
I would say since I came to the table with a background and awareness and openness to this population, it's not something that needed to be provided to me. I'm not sure if as an agency that they do it behind scenes. I'm almost certain that they do because I have been through so many trainings with them on other topics. But since I'm not in need of that training, it's not something I've experienced. But to your point, I would just say, as Michael Jackson taught us, we should start with the human in the mirror. It's going to take time to bring about the change that we want to see. But I think if we just start with ourselves, start advocating in our agencies for trainings or these changes, or if we have the power to do it ourselves, do it, and just kind of, slowly model what we want to see. As it has brought so much change, I think it will continue to bring change. But let's just start with ourselves, with the people in our inner circles, people that we have access to, and just hope for the best.
Yes, very well said. Just want
Excellent,
to,
excellent response.
yes, it is.
Go ahead, Lucy.
Considering that we're kind of throwing things at you. One of the things that concerns me a lot is long-term placement. When someone has to go into a nursing home or a residence. And we talk about that, Elliot and I, that this comes up and some people are afraid, even at this day and age, to divulge that information. And because I'm, unfortunately, with all due respect to religion and all that, sometimes that affects where they live or the opportunities of being able to go into a long-term placement. So I'm just wondering, do you deal as a case manager, do you deal with that as well, where people are looking for placement, or does it go to another agency? I'm not quite sure about the structure in the United States.
Oh, no, that is something that we are tasked with. It's some of the reasons folks call in for case management, or when I go out and assess, whether they bring it up or not, I plant the seed to let them know this is something you need to be thinking about in case it gets to that point. But there's a big stigma behind it. A lot of the apprehension that I get is, oh God, I don't want to be locked away. I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want to be mistreated. I'm better off just staying here and falling in my home or dying in my home. And the way that I overcome that, and I've had a few cases that had success from with this, is let's just go visit them. We're not there yet. We're not saying this is it, but let's go visit a few different ones. Because depending on the person needs, there are different settings that they could go into, whether it be a 55 plus independent living community, whether it be an actual assisted living facility, which could be in a large building, or it could be in a house right next door, or in worst cases, nursing home if they need 24-hour care. And I see that once they go and they see that these communities are, uplifting and have a lot of activities, and they meet some of the staff during our visits, their perception changes. They may not say, sign me up today, but they have a better idea of what's going on. They seem to be more open-minded. And when we talk about it in future sessions, they're more open to it.
And do you feel that these organizations, these places are open to and welcome people from the LGBTQ community?
Absolutely. Like I said, I would say that our community has shifted to the point where you can see the verbiages on the websites and the flyers when you go, because I have some folks that you can see what's happening when we go and visit. They don't seem to do a second look or give any judgmental gestures. They welcome them in. I haven't placed anyone yet. So again, sometimes the surface is very welcoming and inclusive. But once we get in and start service, it could be a different scenario. Don't have any experience with that yet. But I will definitely say that's a part of my research when I'm calling to schedule these visits is, what type of services do you have in place for our LGBTQ community? And based on their response or references, I decide whether to go or not.
Thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
So I know that we're coming to the end of our conversation, and I was curious, given your experiences working with older community members, what advice would you have for younger community members now who may find themselves aging and may be a caregiver, or who may need care for themselves? Because what we have found is that younger members of the LGBTQ plus community, though we are caregivers at a higher rate than our non-LGBT peers, many of us don't plan for that.
That's a big question. So I would say for us younger folks, or just being here today and seeing this information, just start to plant long-term care plans into individuals that you talk to, into their mind. A lot of us plan for retirement. We have our retirement savings plans, but a lot of us don't budget the long-term care component with that. There are actual long-term care plans that we can start investing in early on, that will be specifically for our care when we get to that point. So again, whether it's just personally within your family, in your agency, with your clients, start bringing that up. It's not necessarily a part of my checklist with my intake. It's just something that I do with all of my clients. Hey, what is your long-term care plan? God forbid it gets to this point. Who have you appointed to take care of you, make decisions for you? Do you have it in writing? What's going to happen with your assets? Have you updated your will yet? Just having the conversations is a starting point. And then more specifically to our LGBTQ community, again, that may be the only child that's not the care for their parents, or may not have had the best relationships with their siblings. So now trying to communicate with them is challenging. Do your due diligence so that there's no fingers pointed at you. Well, why didn't you ask? Or why didn't you, come to us and let us know? But if you get pushback and you are facing this alone, reach out to your community. There's a lot of support groups. There's trainings on how to become a good caregiver. There's respite care that a lot of our insurances will offer us to give us a break and have someone else come in. Biggest point is just reach out for help. Where do you start? Call your insurance company. Speak to your EAP department. Call 211.
Those are all great resources. And I want to thank you again so much for joining us today and for all of the work that you do. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again so that all of you can see the JCS access line that Serena referred us to, as well as a number of other resources that we have to share, including 211 and 988, which we talked about during our program today. But we also have links that are embedded here, if you see them in blue, from the LGBTQ plus Caregiver Center, the GLBT National Health Center. They have a tremendous resource database, and of course, SAGE, Services and Advocacy for Gay Elders. And they have a 1-800 number that we have here, as well as an email address. And for local LGBT community centers, you can visit the link that we have here for CenterLink. And last but not least, some of the previously recorded videos that we've referenced during our program today, you can access to the Caregiver Teleconnection YouTube channel, which is also hyperlinked here. And I will pass it on to you, Evelyn, as I know that you have some information to share before our session ends.
But before we do that, may I say a few words to you,
Please.
Serena? The Jewish Community Center is very lucky to have you as a case manager. I just want to say that because, you know, being in the field, you're one of the good ones.
I try, and I give God all the credit. Trust me. Thank you for your kind words. And Elliot, thank you for the opportunity. I genuinely appreciate it.
I was delighted to be able to have you join us today and for you to share information about the work that you and your organization do. And hopefully some community members in South Florida will be able to make use of our program today. But also, we have so many healthcare professionals who participate in our programs from across the country. And I think we all have so much to learn from one another. And you have been an excellent, excellent teacher and advocate. And I want to thank you for the work that you do on behalf of our community.
I want to thank you too so much. And it's been a great conversation. Would it be all right if I ask you a question, Serena? Just
absolutely.
I live in San Diego, and I imagine that where you are, and you talked about immigration and immigrants where you are. I bet your community is quite diverse in terms of cultures from all over North America, South America. Do you find big differences other than immigration problems in that population?
Those were the two that came up for me, and I didn't really get too specific. So just to reiterate, the two challenges that I see in this community is the African American community, and then folks that are coming from an immigration background, because they're not just facing the discrimination and lack of resources of being LGBTQ, but now you add racism to it, or you add, you know, not having a legal status, or parents that have legal status to it. So yes, in South Florida, that is very popular. We're considered a melting pot. And a lot of people migrate here, and it's a challenge we have to overcome.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
For Stephanie, in case you don't have a monthly calendar, I just want you to know we still have a couple of great presentations this month. Loss of Life Advocates is next Wednesday. It's talking about how hard it is to do that care plan for end of life. We also have on Monday, June 24th, Financial Planning for Older Adults, What Family Caregivers Need to Know, with John Leithner. And then on Thursday, June 27th, we have the final Pride of Caregiving, Pride of Caring, Alzheimer's, Dementia, and the LGBT plus community with our dear Lucy and Dr. Sklar. And I want to remind you that next Thursday, there won't be a Pride of Caring presentation, but as Elliot explained, the presentation is already on the podcasts, and you can go on that YouTube link and you can find it. The name of it is Mental Health, or it's in regards to mental health. So we hope that you will check that out before we see you 2 Thursdays from now. And I want to thank you all for I want to thank you for attending, and also to thank our presenters, our discussants. That was really a nice, warm, good feeling sort of discussion. And also, I want to thank the WellMed Charitable Foundation for all they contribute to the community, to the nation, really, in terms of these podcasts, their SOS centers, all of the clinics that they have, and the experts that they invite in to do these podcasts. And especially when we're talking about Elliot and Lucy, all of the research that they do to help us stay up to date and to kind of know what's going on so that we can be affirming and inclusive. So thank you so much, everyone. And with that, I am going to stop the recording.
Thank you so much. Thank you again, Serena.
Bye-bye.
Welcome, you guys.